Hey babes, welcome back to another episode of the Beauty Expanded podcast. This episode is a really special one because I got to spend some quality time and really catch up with Gina Lee from Elevated You Studio. A little bit about Gina. She's been a medical tattoo artist for the past 6 years, which actually was about the same time that I started. So we both entered in this industry about the same time, even though we hadn't actually met each other. But through the years of following each other and supporting each other, we've really been able to build and cultivate a genuine connection, which I am so grateful to truly call Gina a trusted colleague of mine and a peer. She is one of the first people that I am so fortunate to reach out to when things get kind of tricky, or when I'm faced with a challenge, or if I have any questions, or just to simply update her on any new techniques or serums that we're using or that she's using. And what makes it so interesting is that have never met Gina Lee in person. We have each other's cell phone numbers. We'll send voice notes to each other back and forth a few times a year. But every time I connect with her and speak with her, it's like we've been best friends for a really long time. And the longer that I'm in this industry, the more that I see that, unfortunately, I feel is very rare, that finding colleagues and peers in the same industry as you is not really an easy thing to do. And maybe you can relate. You'd like to think that it's collaboration over competition, but in reality, that doesn't always, or I would say more often than not, doesn't really pan out that way. I would say that most people do feel in competition with their peers, whether it's jealousy or whether it's scarcity, that if I tell her things that are working really well for us, that somehow that would leave me less clients or something to that effect. And I'll give you guys a little backstory. So I'm a huge advocate for continuing education, as you guys know. And I had reached out to this company who is offering trainings, and they post constantly of new training dates, all of that stuff. I ended up reaching out to them and I was like, you know what? Maybe they're someone that I'm going to continue my education for this year. Send them an email, ask them for dates, and I get a reply back. Actually, they didn't reply back to me for a couple weeks. I reached out to them again. I didn't hear back from them. And then I reached out again. And then I finally got a reply back saying that the instructor was fully booked for the rest of 2024, which I thought was really odd because they had just recently posted on Instagram new training dates. So when I replied to that email, I thanked them for responding and then was just curious that, does that sound right? Because I just saw that you guys posted on Instagram new training dates for April and May. And then I just get a really quick reply back saying, yep, we'll let you know if anything opens up. Long story short, knew someone else who reached out to them and got a completely different answer, that they are in fact training every weekend, that they offer trainings every weekend. So whatever reason or why they didn't want to train me is really none of my business. And I have to say that it is disappointing though, right? Of course, my feelings are valid. Of course, I'm a little confused. I don't know them personally. I don't understand why they wouldn't want to train me. I'm not there to judge them. I'm simply there to learn a new technique or another artist's perspective on camouflage tattooing. Because that's the thing about art, is there's many different ways to paint a canvas, and I'm open to learning what works for other people. But for whatever reason, they refused to train me. And so that was just a recent illustration of a personal experience that I've had, where you'd like to think that other artists in your industry would be supportive in bettering and contributing to the industry as a whole and not gatekeep, but that isn't always the case. And I will say, having had that experience most recently has really made me reflect back on my relationship with Gina and just being extremely grateful and appreciative of her transparency and her willingness to help out and also be someone that I can trust. And we do dive into that in this episode. And so if you guys are able to ever find yourself a Gina, if not have Gina be your trainer, you are so very lucky. In this episode, Gina really opens up about the start of her career and her honesty of being at her rock bottom, which then led her to challenge herself and her belief in herself to build a new business with nothing from ground zero and with two little girls and being a mom. I think you're going to find her story really inspiring. I think you'll also find that she's an incredible trainer with a ton of wisdom, a ton of experience, and more importantly, a passion for doing good work and offering knowledge and a viable business to her students. You can tell from this episode and this interview that she really means to do well by her students. And I, of course, highly respect that about her. So without further ado, let's dive into this episode. And if this is something that you found to be really valuable with the information that we share, I would love to know. I'd love to ask for a review on the podcast itself and also just showing Gina some support, give her a follow, send her a message, share the podcast episode on your IG stories, tag us. I'm sure she would love to know. I hope you enjoy. Hi, I'm Jade Hernandez, a camouflage tattoo artist and educator. I help beauty bosses effectively market their business and become the authority in their field, close more leads, and make more money. In the past 6 years, I've launched 2 successful beauty businesses to multiple 6 figures with over 100 5-star raving reviews and several media press spotlights. While most marketers will tell you to hustle and work harder for success, I'll show you how to create more value from the inside out so that you work less, make more, and truly expand and transform your business and life. This is the Beauty Expanded podcast. Why don't we just go ahead and start? Because I actually don't know how you got into paramedical tattooing, and I don't even know what you were doing beforehand. So I'm really excited to hear this story.
Absolutely. So I do have a quite interesting story, my life story, but which led me into trying to manifest something good for my life. So when I discovered this career path, it was 2018, and I was in a really rock bottom of my life, coming out of divorce. And then I jumped right back into this new relationship, which practically left me nothing. It's instead of trying to build my life back up after divorce, I panicked. I just panicked. I didn't know what to do alone by myself with 2 daughters. I have 2 teenage daughters now. So I went right back on Match.com and found this man. And then that didn't go well either. After a year and a half being together, I had to leave the man. When I left him, it just completely left me. I had to leave empty hand with nothing. I literally moved into this tiny apartment with 3 mattresses and coffee table. And I tend to, people who have like a traumatic child who will sometimes experience this self-sabotaging throughout the lifetime, that's what was going on with me. Then I didn't know what I was doing to myself. So making these wrong decisions, coming out of it, and then trying to heal myself, I just knew that I was more than my past or my sadness or the traumatic past experience I had. So I kept praying and praying and praying. And then I came across this YouTube video of Canadian tattoo artist who was a burn victim, and she ended up camouflage tattooing on her burn scar, like throughout the course of 2 years, I believe. It was a great PR. I know it's a PR, but her story really inspired me, seeing that she didn't let her trauma stay as trauma. She became somebody who's now helping these burn victims. All these burn victims all over the world were flying to her to get treated. And then she made a light out of her trauma. So I needed to hear it at that time of my life. And then since then, I just started looking, how can I get into this? So in 2019, I took my birth training. Since then, I'm here. But throughout this divorce and everything, what I was doing then was I used to own a pet store. I was a pet store owner selling dog supplies and little puppies and little animals, completely different from what I do now. And it was interesting. And before then, I was a copywriter, but this was in Korea. Yeah, because I came to United States. I was 27 27. I was pretty much an adult. I didn't speak much English when I came. And now I'm 27, 20 years later. I found my home. But then I had a plan to go back to my country and then get a better job and get promoted because things in South Korea back then, there were like a lot of discrimination against women when it comes to getting promoted at jobs. So I needed that degree. So I wanted to get the degree and go back to Korea. But then I met my ex-husband and then life took a turn. Yeah. So when I discovered this career path, I just knew there's just something that I couldn't resist. I knew this is what I wanted to do. Yeah, I didn't have any art skill other than those art schools my mom sent me as a child that I enjoy going there, but I had no intention to make artistic skills as my career. And I was just working in companies as a copywriter in advertising agency in South Korea.
Fascinating. You had been through the divorce and then the new relationship that you lost everything in. Obviously, there was a moment where you're like, okay, I'm more than my past. But what helped get you there? Because I feel like a lot of people can relate to overcoming some adversity, but not then actually make the best out of that. And so, were you diving into personal development at the time, coaching? Like, what kind of like really helped support you? Because it sounds like you didn't have a ton of support being a single mom of two kids. So, what actually helped you, I guess, believe in yourself? Because I think that's one of the hardest things that people have to face.
I totally agree with you. So I guess that was a blessing from God or this higher power because the biggest enemy to myself then till I mean even till these days too is myself from getting rid of negative thoughts. I didn't have money to go get therapy. And for the longest time, it was just like the longest battle. So going through the divorce and everything, I then already had lost all my support from my friends because when you're in such a bad situation, because it was a long process of custody battle. So when you go through such a hard time, long time, you just carry this negative energy and people don't like that. People just don't want it. They stop inviting you over. They just don't want you around happy moments anymore. So I realized, oh my God. But then thankfully, I had that self awareness and I just needed to find how I can get out of here. So I couldn't see, just like everybody else, what's going to be in 3 months. I can't see what's going to be in 6 months when I'm in such a darkest place in my life. How can you see that far? I'm surviving today. So the only thing I could do is try to find the channels, anything available in YouTube, everything available in podcasts, everything available for free that I could keep reminding myself positive thoughts and reinforcing myself to stay positive. Okay, if I didn't find the solution today, there's going to be a solution tomorrow. If I didn't find anything that resonates with me in terms of what I want to do with rest of my life, and am I going to really be able to do it? Am I capable of doing it? From all these years of growing up in South Korea, I don't know if you're familiar with South Korean culture, the parents tend to criticize children. It
Yeah.
doesn't give you good self-esteem. 100%. You always doubt yourself. You always feel like it's your fault. You're always blaming on yourself. So then here I am again, doubting myself. Can I really do it? I felt like I was a failure at that. I failed the personal relationship. I couldn't even do this. Can I really succeed in the new career? So every moment, I'm not joking, I had a rubber band around my wrist. And every time I see myself thinking about, oh my God, I don't want to go on like this anymore. I'm such a loser. I'm such a failure. And any negative that comes to me, I will literally
Like the rubber band.
flip that and then remind myself, you're doing that again. Get out of it. So this was it every day, every morning, myself standing in front of this tiny bathroom, in front of the mirror. I will literally tell myself, okay, chin up, shoulders spread it, stand tall, and then smile like you already succeeded. Like this type of like manifesting positive future. This was my everyday. So the pet store I had, what happened was during the custody battle, I ended up giving it to my ex-husband in order to get full custody. So briefly speaking, it was a really like freak situation. But then my ex-husband who turned kind of cult in the religion and then put me through hell, like trying to convert me. So because of that reason, I knew that I could not leave my children in this abusive environment or also pretty condescending culture towards women. The women didn't have any control over their body. We couldn't decide if we wanted to do birth control or not. We just had to pop out a baby because that's what they told me to do. Their religion told us to do. So I couldn't agree to it. So that's why I fought so hard. As a result, in order to keep my kids full time, I had to give him everything. I gave him house. I gave him business too. So I didn't have anything to build up to. So I had to start from ground zero, like complete ground zero.
When you say that you started in ground zero, that's an incredible story. So, congratulations for overcoming that. That's really inspiring. When you had to restart from ground zero, because I'm making the assumption that a lot of your students that come to you, they may have some similar stories as hitting that rock bottom and beginning to doubt themselves. Can I really do this? Can I really make a career out of this? Can I actually make money out of this? So, when you were at rock bottom, did you get any business loans? How did you manage to pay for your training?
So this was a crazy part. So I did anything I could do to save up that first $5,000. It was the money that I could buy snacks for my kids. It was the money that I could use to take my kids to fun birthday activities and throw nice birthday parties. I didn't do any of this. Any extra money I had, my class and my education was first. I had to put that aside. And after a while saving up that money, I took my first course, 5 days training. It didn't really teach me anything. It just didn't teach me. I felt like it didn't go in depth. I remember feeling when I left the class, oh my God, what did I do? This was a huge mistake. And again, I could have thought, you see, did that again to yourself. You lost that money again. But I didn't think that way. I decided to believe in myself. I decided to believe in my gut feeling and said, okay, I made a mistake not doing enough research and training. This time, I'm going to save up another $5,000, but then I'm going to do research in the meantime.
Yeah.
So I kept going. So most of people would have given up then. But I just knew this is what I wanted to do. I had to do this. I can't describe that strong connection I felt toward this career. So I just kept pushing. I did nanny, dog walking, mommy helper, driving other kids while I'm carrying my kids in the back. Anything I could do. Virtual assistant to companies in South Korea, translation for the Korean tourists who come here for work, or anything that I could do. I was on internet constantly trying to find part-time gigs.
When you were building up your business, obviously where you are today is going to be different from even last year.
Mhm.
But when was the turning point for you to be like, "Ah, I'm so glad I didn't give up. I knew it." Or when was that moment? Was that roughly a year later? Like, how long did it take you to build a stable enough business that you didn't have to work 10 out end jobs?
I'd say it was many years. First, I would say 2 years, because first 2 years, even though I did make more money. So out of all those jobs, like the side gigs I was doing, because my kids were still young and I didn't have anybody to pick up and drop off my kids for their activities in schools and things like that. So I had to do something around their schedule. So I was making maybe about $7,000 a month, which is just, I was barely making ends meet. So after I took my first training and then got licensed, and then I looked for a room inside a little hair salon. I was renting a couple of days a week. And then I had all my models come during this day so I can lower my overhead. And I knew I was not going to make much money during this period while I was practicing and trying to figure things out. Even though the training that I took, the second one was better than the first one, it still left me a lot of empty spots that I had to try to connect the dots. So that's why, like, when I created this training, I wanted to create training programs for my students that they don't need to feel that there are a lot of missing information. That was a huge part for me.
Yeah.
During these 2 days, so what I did, so then here I am, how I'm going to find the models. I don't have any network. So I went on Facebook moms groups and then just posted, I am a new medical tattoo artist. And people didn't even know I was a medical tattoo artist. So I had to say, I am doing stretch marks treatment and trying to look for models to build my portfolio. Anyone interested, send me a message. I had so many messages in all different groups. Honestly, I just had endless models to practice on. That's how I I build my portfolio, I charge them $100. And then maybe I would say maybe 50% of those models I practice, they became paying clients because they saw improvement and they'll be like, hey, I really like this improvement. It's incredible. How much would you charge me if I wanted to do the second session? So I would charge them maybe half of what I charge now. And then by the time I hit 8 months working 3 days a week, I made 7,800. So I quit all my side gigs. That was the scariest moment of my life. Like, oh my God, can I do this really? But I quit because I needed more time. While I'm doing that, I didn't have any experience in digital marketing, anything like. I mean, I did have some experience managing account, things like that, but I wasn't good at making graphic, for Instagram posts, reels, nothing like that. So in this process, I had to keep taking all the free courses available on YouTube and get familiar with how to do Instagram marketing and Facebook marketing and all that and other aspects of online marketing available out there, Google ads and all that. So what I did in this process, another important thing I did was I made sure I put aside some money for more marketing. And then I put aside another portion of money for continuing education. So I kept taking education training courses one after another. I think I have close to 18, the certificate of completion.
Yeah, and that's a lot.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people go into this industry thinking, okay, all I got to do is certified. And then you realize, oh, I got to learn how to market myself and get clients. Then you begin to realize that you have to also do good work. And then you also have to figure out, well, how do I get referrals? How do I do advertising? Oh, I can't just rely on posts on Instagram. What you're really stepping into is the entrepreneurial world.
Right.
Yes, or a paramedical or camouflage, however you want to call yourself. Once you start owning your own business, you start to realize that there's just different layers that you have to continue to uncover. And I think that's what I was bringing your story. It's like you took one step and that one step then led you to the next step. And then it brought you more clarity onto what other steps needed to happen right then and right at that moment to take your business to the next level. But yeah, I feel like you just really brought a good point up because I do think a lot of people think it's so quick. I'm going to get certified in one post and I'm going to get thousands of people that are interested in booking with me.
Right.
And ever is it that simple?
Exactly. I mean, you'll be surprised. I tell all my students, just like how I explained to you, exactly what I did. How many models did you do first year? I cannot even count. I think if I work 2 days a week practicing on the models, within that 1 week, I had at least 4 or 5 models a week. Okay. In average, let's say three models a week. Most of people, I find that they don't do it. I tell them this is how you do it, but then they still don't do it.
Why do you think that is?
I have no idea. I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's kind of in my nature to hustle. For me, it drives me crazy if there's something that I don't know and I have to figure this out. I want to know what's the next step. I will dig all over the internet and find the answers. But I just feel a lot of people don't have that motivation. They don't take ownership of what they're doing. They're very passive. They want other people to do it for them. But for me, so that's what I realized. Some students reach out to me like, I don't know how to post on Instagram. I think I'm going to have somebody do it. When you don't know how it works, you're going to hire somebody to do it. How they're going to do a good job when you hire somebody and pay money. So then I will send them all these resources on YouTube or master classes or use online course, digital marketing courses and have them like, these are cheap courses you can take, but extremely useful. You will understand what's marketing and branding and all that. Then I think a lot of people are overwhelmed to know that they have to study more.
And I also feel sometimes when you hit rock bottom, because that's where you were when you first started, when you first got into this industry, you had this perspective of being, what else can I lose? And so why not just try something completely different and at least take the risk? What kind of key characteristics have you noticed with the students that you've trained that does lead them to be successful in this industry versus maybe those that don't end up ever doing anything from learning?
I would say courage. So, for instance, we all start scared. I mean, who has 100% confidence when we don't know exactly?
If you think you got it and you've barely even touched anyone, that would not concern me more than you being scared.
Right, right. I totally agree with you. So I tell my students, you still gotta do it being scared. That's the clear difference between people who would achieve to only a certain level and they don't exceed above it is when they cannot overcome that fear. For instance, do you remember the time when I reached out to you about the 3D areola tattoo when I was like thinking that which class I was gonna take? Oh my God. For 2 years, I couldn't get over my fear because I didn't want to mess up cancer patient's skin. And I've never done like artistic tattoo and I've never drawn like that way. So I just practiced drawing for the longest time. From the very first time that I reached out to my mentor, Stacey Ray, it took 2 years till I could actually come to her and take the trade because I was so scared. But then I said to myself, okay, I need to get over this fear. I had gotten over all other fears. So now I gotta do this. And when I took the first step, it just kind of like flew in. I just found my own flow. So I think it's with everybody. That first step, you have to cross that bridge that you would put your fear behind and really focus on leveling yourself up. I think that's the biggest characteristic traits that I see in people.
I see that too. And it's a muscle that you build, this continually work through. Because even like you said, even after, for me, I've been tattooing for 6 years. And even at 6 years, I have a unilateral client coming in this month. And I'm scared because I don't have a ton of experience doing unilateral areola tattoos. So for me, it's like that fear, I don't think it ever goes away. It will just change. And so you'll be confronted, new level, new devil, another level of your business, and you're going to be faced with a newer challenge. So here's something that we all experience. But I think what makes the difference between those that actually pursue this versus those that quit early is that the meaning that you give to your fear. So it's like you knew you were still scared and yet you still practiced and you put in the work. You didn't give it a meaning or make it mean that if you feared this somehow significantly, it meant that you weren't meant to do this, or somehow you took your fear to mean something as in like, don't do this. You obviously experienced the fear and then you still pursued it and overcame it. And I think that's the biggest thing is when people become afraid, instead of confronting it or overcoming it, they actually give it this weight and hold to mean that they shouldn't be doing this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. They start making an excuse, valid excuse in their mind. I start looking for reasons why they shouldn't be doing it as a coping mechanism caused by their subconscious mind that doesn't want anything scary. During the time that when I was like going through divorce and everything, I knew instinctively I have to take myself out of the environment I was at. And I just wanted to discover who I am and myself more. So I enrolled HMI, which is a hypnosis school. Like they teach you how to do hypnosis therapy. So there were a lot of psychologists, psychiatrists at school. I went there for a year and a half. I learned the power of the subconscious mind and then the conscious mind and how the relationship works in between. So I know when the self-sabotage kicks in, the manipulation from subconscious mind that it doesn't want me to get hurt, but then it's also preventing me from doing things that will be positive for my life because I'm scared. So I totally see that trait between in people. But I mean, that's the thing. Like the fact that we are an entrepreneur, it's like not only talking about the technique itself, how tempestuous is it in this business environment? Instagram changing algorithm all the time. Meta is coming up with new structure. TikTok is going to be bad or what now? It's just every day something new. I'm figuring things out every single day. So I think we have to look at it as a blessing. Oh, wow. Okay. Let's figure this out. Like this type of attitude instead of, oh my God, another one. So that's what makes a big difference. And I am trying to improve that every day as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
So you've been in this industry for well. What have been some of the trends and things that you've noticed, given the perspective that you started so long ago when no one even really knew what the hell this was? And now you're looking at it and you've seen how quickly it's grown. What are some things that excite you about the industry? And what are some things that you're more hesitant on that maybe not anyone else is seeing? Because I think a lot of people just, whatever they see on Instagram, they just instantly believe. Some of your concerns, and what are some things that you're really excited about?
What I'm excited about this potential of this industry. I mean, given the fact that it just grew so quickly, I can't believe how many business opened up past 6 years. It's incredible to see. And what excites me is that even then, I think we still have more people who don't know about it than people who know about it because there are
Yeah.
so many people. And people who did the stretch mark, stream, or scar treatment in the past, they still need more sessions. They want to do touch up and then they look for different business to come. And then it's just a continuous flow of clients that we have in this industry. So the potential of this industry is what excites me really. Also, plastic surgeons started recognizing medical tattoo as a part of post-op. A lot of them want to hire medical tattoo artists in their offices, which before it just didn't happen. And there are also a lot of plastic surgeons are more aware that or thinking about how can we help clients after surgery with the scars. Whereas before they were just simply not interested. Used to have so many clients telling me exactly the same thing. My surgeons were just not interested in helping me with the scars at all, or they didn't have any method or technique other than
Mhm.
laser. There's a limitation dermatology can offer when it comes to treating scars. So the recognition from the medical industry itself, I think it's huge. In the beginning, I think it may create also more jobs in the future. That's just how I think that people who don't want to jump into being an entrepreneur right away, there may be more opportunities that they could work in the clinic environment and build their experience and then open their own business in the future. So that's kind of what I envision in the future. And what scares me is that to see people who jump into the industry without realizing what's really involved. So if I see single moms or other people coming into this industry and taking my training, I tell them always, you don't want to quit your job completely right now because you have to build your business. And I share how I transition myself from doing all this multiple side gigs into full-time job. So I think that as trainers, we should be more responsible to be transparent what's really involved in opening your own business. And it's not for the weak, really.
Well,
Mhm.
absolutely. I'm going to ask you some questions, kind of spitfire.
Mhm.
What do you think of skin tone detectors?
Oh, so the skin tone detectors, I don't really believe it. I'm going to be honest with you, okay? I don't really believe in it. In order for us to know, did I make a mistake? Is it a good color? You have to develop and train your eyes first to understand the warm tone, cool tone, undertone of the skin, the overtone of the skin, the dominating undertone of the pigments. All of the combination, it's just impossible to do camouflage tattoo without knowing this part of medical tattoo. So when you are just 100% depending on the machine, it's just gonna be never your technique. What happens if machine breaks? So even if you do want to use a machine in the future, because there are a lot of machine coming out from South Korea or here in United States, is there has been always some sort of more a convenient, like a cheat sheet type of method. But I believe in fundamental. I believe in principle. I believe in basic. And that's what builds us the true artistry. And then other gadgets like machine and things like that can be built on top of it, but not as same level as the principle.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I would have to agree with you, Gina, because I get that question asked all the time. And at the end of the day, and the gadgets could definitely change in the future, but the gadget that I know that they're talking about, the way that I think about it is in order to detect someone's skin tone, it has to go through some sort of tunnel for the algorithm or the technology to kind of like pick it up and then tell you what ink numbers or how much ink you need to put in. Versus me, the way that I color match is I use natural light. And like you said, I have a trained eye to like look at an ink tone, take into consideration how their overtone is going to heal, how that's going to overlay above the undertone. And then I just look at like the natural light of how light, because light is always reflecting off of things. We're always looking at everything through the reflection of light. So what use natural light to see how it reflects and bounces off the tones in the skin. Me, same thing. I'm a huge believer of teaching the fundamentals and the principles. I'm going to teach you how to color match anyone and everyone so that you're never. Hey guys, so in this particular part of the episode, Gina's dog can be heard in the background. And as you guys have already heard, it's a little bit choppy. I feel like my Wi-Fi wasn't really connected. So when her dog started barking, when we started editing the episode, it just completely blanked out this entire part of my response. And so I'm going to just paraphrase what I was saying, which was when you are dependent on a machine, versus using what Mother Nature has already given us, which is natural light. What ends up happening is through that machine, it has to detect a color for the technology to work. But in that machine, it detects a color through a tunnel. And so that tunnel in itself creates a shadow, which to me adds a little bit of mistrust for me. Whereas when I can look at everything, knowing that everything is bounced through the reflection of light in real life, I personally would rather just depend on natural light. And in Arizona, we have plenty of that. Not only that, but then I also love giving my artists, because one of the things that I really value is freedom. So giving them and empowering them with the ability to freely choose whatever inks they want, whatever brands they want, because I believe that's part of the artistry. It's artist preference. Once you understand the fundamentals and principles of something, you can then have the creative freedom to explore and experiment, because at the end of the day, fundamentals are fundamentals. That's kind of what we were discussing in this part of the episode. So back to it. Oh crap, I'm only limited to X, Y, and Z, and I can only buy this brand because this brand is associated with this machine and so forth.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the exact reason why I don't go for it, because just like you, I want my students to be able to match the color with any brands out there if necessary. I'm constantly testing out new different color tone to see how it heals. How are we going to add green hue? How are we going to add more orange hue? There's just so much more to it other than following what the machine tells you. And not only that, even the machine is not advanced enough to tell you exact color, and you still have to tweak it. You still have to have an eye to be able to detect, oh, there was too much pink in there. There was too much orange in there. It's too warm. How are we going to neutralize this to make it a little bit cooler, to make it more realistic? You don't learn this if you're using the machine, because you're just following what machine is telling. So yeah, that's my opinion.
I know titanium dioxide is a pretty controversial issue amongst the PMU world. What are your thoughts on titanium dioxide?
We do have to use it with being aware of when we're using it, what we're using on. But these days, I feel like a lot of pigments are, in terms of like titanium dioxide, talking about like inorganic, organic pigments and things like that. A lot of pigments are hybrid. So it's kind of compromising the issues that we had with titanium dioxide. But in my opinion, regardless of what pigment you're using, the way the tattoo pigment fades, huge part is happening inside your body, because our immune cell will constantly attack the tattoo pigments trying to disperse out of our body. So you will fade one way or another. So I think the acknowledgement or being transparent about how tattoo pigment is going to fade to your client, explaining to them how tattoo works. I think I like to educate my clients because of that reason, so they know what to expect.
What are your thoughts on hyperpigmentation?
Hyperpigmentation, as we all know, is a natural part of wound healing process. So I prefer to have a solution for hyperpigmentation if anyone is worried about post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation after the treatment. So I like to incorporate like a retinol or potent melanin inhibitors, the list of them, and in aftercare. After a certain period of time, when skin is not too sensitive to use these harsh ingredients, I find it pretty effective. I do have, I would say, literally just 2, 3 clients a year, maybe that took a really long time to heal, even though they use these aftercare products. Other than that, I do find that these aftercare products definitely help with those of any clients who may be concerned about.
Okay. And then last spitfire question. And I know we've had conversations off script about this, but thoughts on tattooing over dark scars?
Mhm. Well, so to be honest with you, tattooing on a dark scar with pigments has not been my favorite way to resolve the issue. I thought it just looked so cakey and not natural. And I thought to myself, I mean, if I had tummy tuck surgery or if I was going to do this treatment on myself, am I going to like how it looks? The answer was no. So I thought, okay, maybe it doesn't look natural to everybody too. But then it was very surprising to me that some people actually liked it. So I think that's a part of the reason why that camouflaging dark scar is becoming a sort of a trend. But the dilution of the ink is so crucial so it doesn't become cakey and patchy. And I do see some good result. I do make some good result on certain types of skin, but I still prefer to do the preparation phase before I could do camouflage tattoo on dark scar by lightening or doing the scar reduction.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I definitely agree. It is the new trend right now. As easy as it looks online, just over some white ink over dark scars. Gina made a really good point in saying that, I'm talking to listeners, is there's the dilution component to that. So it's not as easy as just taking white ink and slapping it over a dark scar for it to be able to build and for it to be able to look as natural as possible if they are going that route. I mean, I think that's where a lot of people are, again, kind of like skipping corners, thinking, oh, let me just put some white ink over a dark scar and hoping for the best.
Right. And also, don't forget, this is reason why I like to do camouflaging on scar with pigment only as a last resort. If I had tried scar reduction and lightening and nothing had worked, then really leaves us only one option. So that's when I would do scar camouflage on dark scar. But usually these clients are dark skin tone client and their skin tends to be a little bit more oily at times. And then diluting it too much is just gonna be washed off. And then depending on the scar tissue you're tattooing, you may need a little bit less dilution. You may need a little bit more dilution. And depending on how oily the skin is, also we may have to change the dilution a little bit too. As it's not square cut technique as it seems online is my point.
Yeah, I have another rapid fire question, even though I said the last one was the last. Yes. What are your thoughts on working on new stretch marks that are red or pink? Are you for it or are you against it? What's your opinion?
I prefer to wait till like 6 months. I think 6 months is okay. But what I want to see as an indication if they're already in the symptom. Are they having stinging and itching symptoms from stretch marks? Then I definitely don't want to do the treatment. I had a client who had just did the breast implant surgery, breast augmentation surgery, and then caused her to have stretch marks. That was maybe about 5, 6 months post surgery. It was still a little bit reddish. And then I did inclay tattoo over it, and then it just improved like 5%. So as long as it's not too soon, like 2, 3 months after that you discover the stretch marks, in moderation, I'm not too opposed to it as long as they're not experiencing any symptoms.
Yeah, that makes all right, Gina. Obviously, we've both have gotten to our careers by being a brand new artist, like all of our students. We all started where everyone else did with zero experience. And I feel like a lot of people, I don't know about you, but I get a lot of messages online from people who are seeking out more training because they have all these unanswered questions. So they end up training and then still have more questions than they do answers. And it's almost a rite of passage, not like it's a positive thing. So I don't want to like make this sound like, oh, you got to go through a really bad training in order to like make your way into this industry. Cause I would hate for anyone to have to go through that. But I will say though, to be fully transparent, it does seem that 80% of people who do learn some form of camouflage tattooing has had an experience or two, or maybe even more of some poor training. So from a trainer standpoint and also from a student standpoint, because you've experienced poor training, training in the beginning. What are some things that you wish people would be more mindful of or aware of when they're considering getting trained in this industry? Like, what are some things that you would say they need to look for in a training program, in an educator? Because this is a big investment for a lot of people.
Absolutely. I have a lot to say about that. I would say the first thing is that instructor should be actually seeing clients, not only training. If the trainer is just training and they're not seeing any clients, how are they going to be up to date on newest ingredients, newest technique? They're going to run behind. So I think that's number one. And number two is that the before and after photos they're posting, are they authentic? Or is it something they share across the board? And the work is not even there. It's from somebody from Portugal, but it's under the roof of the same company. So they share before and after. I don't think that's ethical thing to do, to be honest. So that kind of stuff. And number three is really, this was a big part for me, that most of the trainings I took in my first year, they didn't teach me tattoo technique. That's crazy to me because we call this permanent makeup tattoo and medical tattoo. And how is nobody teaching tattoo technique? What types of tattoo techniques are there? And why is certain technique applied to permanent makeup tattoo? Why are certain techniques applied to medical tattoo? More about the tattoo fundamental. So I think that's huge. The next thing is definitely color theory and then understanding the pigments, understanding the color and color matching, undertone, overtone, and teaching the students why they're doing what they're doing. Not telling them what to do, but then also the logic, science behind it.
What are some, because I feel like I was a new student today and I didn't know much about this industry. I would say it's got to be kind of hard to have a little bit of that discernment because I can listen to this podcast, for example, and be like, okay, Gina said color theory, Gina said tattoo fundamentals. And then I can look at someone's website that then says that they do cover color theory, tattoo fundamentals, stretch mark and scar camouflage. But it's like, how would you actually be able to decipher, or what advice could you give someone when online you can prove out that you do anything, but then not actually have any, you don't really have to prove it until obviously you go through the training and realize, oh man, color theory was like really vague, or we barely touched on that topic. Cause I've heard of that too, where people are like, I trained with someone that said that they covered all this and we barely covered it.
I totally understand what you're saying. I say the indication could be really looking deeper, asking deeper into what type of tattoo technique are you teaching. If somebody doesn't understand reshading, color packing, or stippling on how are they using this specific technique over what type of scars, in what occasions, that could be an indication for me. As we all know, the camouflage tattoo, in my opinion, gives the best natural looking result when we don't create a pattern, right? We break up the pattern using different type of layer and different technique. But if you don't understand this different technique, what it does, how it looks on the skin when you use this specific technique, how are we gonna tattoo? I don't understand that whole thing. So it's missing such an important part of the education as a camouflage tattoo artist. So I guess knowing what questions to ask, really knowing, well, like what is the difference between permanent makeup tattoo and medical tattoo? And then what are the tattoo techniques? What are tattoo physics? How does really tattoo work? I think that may be a good idea. What do you think? What about you?
Yeah, I would agree. I think you got to take the time to actually get to know your trainer as well and not be afraid to ask those questions. And if they give you vague answers or they kind of brush you off because they're too busy or whatever the case may be, I think those can be really good indicators too that they're brushing you off or being really vague on those answers on a call that you're wondering about. Then I think oftentimes like how people do one thing is often how they do everything. And so that's a really good indicator that the training might also be kind of brushed off on those topics that may not interest them or that they don't want to dive into. And so, yeah, I definitely think that's really important. I would say same thing, like if you've never touched a tattoo pen before, like I'm a huge believer and an advocate that you really got to learn that in person because it's really impossible for you to figure out how deep you got to go in the skin. And that's the benefit of having someone in person teach you is they can literally look at you, tweak your hand movement, the way that you're holding the tattoo pen and make you a better artist because you will naturally have some sort of skill set already, but they can really help manipulate that and improve that so that you're doing really good work. And I think at the end of the day, everyone forgets that we're always working on compromised skin. So this isn't helping, which means that there's a lot more risk in what we do. And if you're not trained properly, it's really easy to make those mistakes.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. So I felt the limitations of learning online through camera. I used to have online training for stretch marks, including camouflage, but I don't have it anymore because of that reason. I just felt this is impossible because I just didn't know how I can teach them the skin depth, the vibration that comes from the skin. How deep is it coming from? How does it feel when needles are bouncing back because scar tissue is thick? And to know when to slow down your hand movement. The balance between your hand motion and the speed of the needle, all that stuff. It was just very limited. I couldn't teach it all through online. So the online training is given to my students as a review, like a refresher course, but I don't take new students for that reason on online training because it's so crucial to learn the posture, the hand movement, the mechanical movement of your arm, all that sort that included in learning medical tattoo.
Yeah, it's like learning any new skill. Like if you learn how to play the piano, you got to first learn how to do it slowly so that you can do it fast. And I just think that in person, if you're brand new, you have to learn how to do it slow so that we give you that base to then be able to be a really great and faster tattoo artist. But then once you have those fundamentals down, I'm not opposed to online training, but I think that it's like right now, I would feel comfortable doing an online training in a somewhat different technique just because I still have those fundamentals in place. But without those fundamentals, I think it's really risky. And that brings me point where I've really been thinking, I've been kind of reflecting a lot on as I've seen students come into our program, as we've pivoted our training program and evolved it. One of the things that's come up for me, and I wonder if this is true for you, is what I've come to realize is that your first year as a medical tattoo artist is the most pivotal one because that first year is when you're trained and you're brand new. And if you begin to start making mistakes early on, you're already feeling insecure as a brand new artist because you lack the experience and you're brand new. So that 1 year is so important. And we forget that. And I wonder if like now when you can kind of reflect back on your trainings and your students, if you can see that, because I feel like if you get trained properly and you have that support, and then you start getting those wins, you start working on clients, you start slowly building up your confidence, like that is huge in your longevity as an artist. But that first year, man, if things don't go right within those first few months, I've noticed that people quit that first year.
I totally agree with you. Yeah, definitely. I would recommend people do just only in person. Once they just want to like learn new technique, once their fundamental is strong in place, then yeah, of course, I take online training as well. So they could go for online training, but the first year to learn the fundamentals to understand. And sometimes if you don't have the fundamental in place, even when you are making a mistake, you may not even recognize you're making a mistake at the moment until it's healed. So that kind of information can be learned only in person training.
Yeah. And speaking of mistakes, I'm curious to see what you tell your students. Because for me, one of the things that I tell my students is look, mistakes are inevitable. I've seen some of my biggest mentors who have been in this field for 25 plus years make mistakes right in front of me, who I highly respect. From surgeons that I know have made mistakes. So for me, the way that I tell my or talk to my students is it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. But what happens or what's more important is what happens after that mistake is made. Do you have the support to reach out to try and fix it, to try and improve it? Can you make it right? Are you accountable? Are you taking ownership? Or are you ghosting your client and going MIA and avoiding it and pretending like it never happened? Or are you taking more continuing education courses to perfect your skills and to really own it in your craft? And so to me, it is it's going to happen, but what's more important is what happens after that.
I cannot agree with you more on this because apparently also me as well, the mistakes I made in the past because of an effort that I put into trying to fix or trying to offer support and throughout numbers of sessions trying to figure out how I can help the clients, they actually appreciate it, whether they get the result or not. So I think that's a huge part as being an ethical medical tattoo artist and talking about being running an ethical business is that I don't know about your area in Arizona, but here in LA, especially in the West Side in Beverly Hills, I have a lot of clients coming to me with not such a good result, camouflaged. Then what I hear from them is just mind blowing that they had gone through like 10, 12 sessions. There's no color. Not only if there's no color, or it is completely off color, like coral pink on areola, like it's just completely off color, but then they've gone 12 sessions throughout a year and a half the course of treatment. So I just believe that some businesses are doing that intentionally, which is kind of alarming. So I want to teach my students, look, we do want to make money, but we don't want to do this to people who are already insecure, right? So I think having an integrity at a medical tattoo artist and as a trainer teaching students to have integrity, I think it's also important part.
Yeah, absolutely. When I look at some of the mistakes I've made, thankfully or grateful that through years of experience of tattooing, those mistakes do get smaller.
Yeah.
They've been still. Whereas in the beginning, when I didn't have a lot of experience, the mistakes were bigger. But I also think about the mistakes that I've made have really helped shape me to become the artist that I am today. Because times when those mistakes happened early in my career, I was very adamant of, oh shit, how do I never not have that happen again? And what do I need to learn from that so that it doesn't happen again? I'm an experiential teacher. A lot of the things that I'm teaching you is literally because I've made those mistakes and I've had to learn. I got to dilute the ink more. Oh, I got to cool down the tone. Oh, like all those things. And so without those mistakes, I wouldn't be the artist I am today. But with that being said, with integrity and ethics, is I don't want to be an artist that is continually making a ton of mistakes because at what point are you just not taking ownership and you're doing more harm than good?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it takes the courage for us to stay also. I think this is the most I can do. It's just not going anywhere. I think we have to stop here. So it's hard to admit and accept that it's time for you to stop. That's kind of hard too. And then, yeah, I mean, the mistakes, I tell my students as well, I made all the mistakes for you so you can to that, but still, they would have to make mistakes to learn. There's no other way around. People can choose either or. Either that will let mistake overwhelm them and quit, or learn from the mistake and really improve your technique based on your mistake. So people have decisions.
Yeah. Well, Gina, I loved talking to you. I don't want to take up too much of more of your time because we already went over the hour, but I really wanted to share with you. I was thinking about you today, knowing that we were having this interview. First of all, thank you so much for taking the time
Thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. I think for me, I've been really fortunate and so grateful to have met you because I would say being in the industry for as long as we have, because we kind of started around the same time, it's been so nice to have a colleague, like to have someone that I can call a peer and know that when I have those oh shit moments or when I have questions that I can call you, text you, send you a voice note. And I feel like I trust you. It means so much to me. I feel like it's a very reciprocal relationship. I can talk to you openly, be fully transparent about some of my cases. I can always get some feedback from you and vice versa. If you have questions, obviously, like I'm there to help. And I think that's really, really hard to find in this industry, maybe in any industry. The fact that I consider you like one of my trusted colleagues in the sense that I have this really great relationship with you. I know you're not going to judge me. I know you're only there to help me grow and vice versa is something that I'm just so appreciative of.
Absolutely. The feelings are mutual. I mean, I couldn't be more blessed to cross the path with you in the same industry because how things can get sometimes the jealousy and competition, and then being able to really share my opinion without feeling judged or without feeling that, oh, now she's going to go spread the rumors. Just a really pure, how can I say, the companionship, I have to say. I appreciate you so much as well.
And thank you so much. Where can everyone find you? Obviously, we'll put in the show notes all of your information. If people are interested in training with you, tell me a bit about your training programs.
Yeah, so my training is structured a bit different way because of my own experience. I feel I wanted to do 3 days beginner program first to teach all the fundamental color matching, all the the basic techniques across stretch marks and scars. And then I want my students to go and practice. And I know it's a hassle. Okay. For a lot of people, it's a hassle to come back and then learn another advanced training. I might add ways to put together, but then how I'm going to be able to help them when they have something they cannot get good results. So once they go and practice on the models and the clients and they encounter any challenges, they really come with the problems to me. So I can really laser focus on the techniques they're having trouble with and improve the technique to the next level. So that's what the advanced training is about.
Are you most active on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook? Where can people find you?
I'm most active on all the platforms, to be honest. Instagram, TikTok, but yes, you can always reach me on Instagram.
Anything else you want to say before we end?
No, it has been such a pleasure sharing the thoughts and opinions experience with you, Jade. I can't wait for both of us to thrive in the industry and then really contribute to this industry as trainers who develop new things, discover new things, and contribution. I think that's a big word. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for tuning in. I'd love to connect and help you more. If you have a question you'd like for me to answer, please send it to jade@studioconceal.com. That's JAYD@studioconceal.com, and I might highlight it on my podcast. I find what's often personal is most general. So if this episode helped you, please share it with a friend who may need the encouragement and inspiration. I'll catch you on the next one.